Good evening, everyone. This is Kiran Palakurti, Advocate, High Court of Telangana. Hope all of you are fine and staying safe. Let us hope this pandemic will end soon. Friends, for the past 1 week, young advocates, JCC aspirants, and some of the judges requesting me to conduct online classes. So I have chosen specific relief act as a topic for today. Uh, Uh, Let me convey some important aspects on this topic today in this 1 hour time. And I've been uploading the videos in my channel regularly from now. Friends, specific relief act. So it is a window of reliefs. Section 4 of the act itself says it is meant for enforcing individual civil rights, not for enforcing penal laws. So it says specific relief to be granted for enforcing civil rights of the parties. It means it insists the word right. So for approaching court of law, civil court, there should be a right, and if there is a right, there must be corresponding obligation on part of any person. So what is an obligation? So when a duty enforceable by law becomes an obligation, all duties are not enforceable. For example, we have moral duties and legal duties. Whenever national anthem is played, we have to stand and we have to respect the national anthem. That is a duty that can be enforced by law. Some duties are moral duties which cannot be enforced by law. For example, there has been a custom whenever you go out from for any work, you have to touch the feet of your elders or your parents, and when you encounter your teacher in the street, you have to salute him or you have to say namaste to him. You have to respect your teachers. So these are all the duties, moral duties. These cannot be enforced before a court of law. Your parents cannot say that my son is not giving me respect, and they cannot approach the court of law. At the same time, understand the different friends. If you fail to maintain your parents, they can approach the court under 125 CRPC. They can also file a suit for maintenance, and they can also very well now approach the revenue divisional officer, who is the competent authority under the Maintenance of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. So all duties are not enforceable. It is only duties that are enforceable before court of law can be agitated by way of filing suits. So whenever there is an obligation lies, a suit can be filed for enforcing that obligation against a party. If a right is vested in a party, suit has to be filed against a party in whom there is a responsibility to mobilize that right. These obligations may be out of contractual obligations because of there is a contract between the parties. In view of the terms of the contract, these obligations have to be enforced. Similarly, some obligations arise uh, out of rights of the parties, various rights of the. For example, I wrote a book, or I'm a film director. Uh, Take the example of film director Rajamouli. He screened a film and he registered with his film with censor board or some patent right agency. I registered my book with copyright agency. Therefore, everyone in the world cannot copy it and they cannot circulate it without my consent. So, if at all they do that, I'm having a remedy of restraining that. It is a preventive relief by way of filing a suit for injunction, because whatever the compensation they may pay, they may offer to pay, or whatever the damages cannot be ascertained because of their illegal acts and civil wrongs done to me. Therefore, the only relief granted to me, specific relief granted to me, is by way of an injunction, which can be obtained by filing a suit, and in that suit I can also obtain a temporary injunction. Similarly, if I am in possession of the property, in my absence, someone occupies the property illegally and he continues in wrongful possession of the property, then I can file a suit for uh, recovery of possession. So also suit for declaration, suit for cancellation, and suit for rectification, and suit for rescission, and ultimately suit for specific performance. Friends, Specific Relief Act 1963, prior to that 1877, thereafter in 2018, from 1st October 2018, it has underwent various amendments. The amendments are with regard to mainly from sections 10 to 20, and some more sections have been added 20, 28, 20B, 20C. And another amendment is with regard to injunctions, granting of injunctions. And also a schedule has been added to the act at the end of the act and categorize the nature of the disputes, mainly infrastructure projects notified by the central government, in which case injunctions cannot be granted. So let us discuss one by one. So friends, section uh, those who are practicing on civil side, majority of the cases earlier was recovery of money, injunction, and partition. Now recovery of money suits, because of uh, the chits tribunal has been established. Therefore, money suits have been reduced, and every creditor is taking checks as a security, and therefore check bounce cases have been increased. Now, the litigation is mainly civil litigation is suit for injunction, partition, and recovery of possession. If you are thorough with Specific Relief Act, Hindu Succession Act, and also Easements Act, these may Hindu Marriage Act, these four enactments cover almost 90% of the litigation in our civil courts. So, friends, Specific Relief Act, several reliefs are given. Section 5 and 6 speaks about suits for recovery of possession of immovable property. Section 6 speaks about recovery of possession of immovable property by a person dispossessed immediately 6 months prior to the filing of the suit. So it is a summary suit. So it is a quick remedy. The difference is a person if in possession of the property till yesterday, but yesterday night he has been disposed by unlawful the persons who are not following law, then uh, they uh, can approach the court by filing a summary suit for recovery of possession. And uh, the important aspect in this case is title is not relevant in this suit. It is a possession that has to be considered by the court, and if a decision is given by the court, it becomes final, and there is no appeal, and also there is no review. Of course, there are two bars. One is it cannot be filed uh, beyond if the dispossession is beyond the period of 6 months, and the other aspect is if government is the defendant. If a person is disposed by the government, a suit under Section 6 cannot be filed against the government. There is no chance of appeal and revision, and there is uh, review. There is no review and appeal, but there is a chance of revision to the High Court under special circumstances like no notice has been issued to the defendant and all those cases, irregular exercise of jurisdiction. So, friends, this is about Section 6. Rarely this has been invoked by the civil courts, but Section 5 is important. It is general recovery of possession by a person dispossessed of immovable property. So the Act says, Section 5 says the procedure to be followed is CPC, Order 7, Rules 1 and 3. CPC procedure, plain written statement, issues, trial and judgment, decree, and execution. This has to be followed by the uh, plaintiff in a suit for recovery of possession. So, friends, uh, suit for recovery of possession. it is governed by section 5, uh, uh, and the limitation period for filing suit is 12 years. There are two articles govern this, article 64 and 65 of limitation act. 64 says if a person disposes of immovable property and the time period is 12 years from the date of dispossession, the burden is always lies on the plaintiff to say that he is not his possession, the other side did not perfect his title by way of adverse possession. Whereas in the case of Article 65 of Limitation Act, plaintiff need not do anything. He need not avert that when he has dispossession everything. Only he has to establish his title over the property. When he could establish the title over the property, the burden lies on the other side to say that he perfected the title by way of adverse possession. So, friends, when you are sure that plaintiff is owner of the property, his title is not in dispute, and is having perfect title over the property, then you have to invoke, you have to frame the plaint in such a manner that it would attract Article 65 of Limitation Act, because based on that pleadings, the burden lies on the other side. And now, recent judgment of the Supreme Court in Ravinder Kaur Grewal versus Manjit Kaur, 2019 Supreme Court, by compiling various judgments on the aspect of adverse possession, the Supreme Court says a person in possession of the property for a period of more than 12 years, that is based on adverse possession, he can also file a suit for declaration, and he can also get ownership, because the person who loses the possession, who is not in possession of the property for a period of more than uh, 12 years, his rights will be extinguished under section 27 of Limitation Act. Therefore, a person can also file a suit for declaration, and as per the judgment of the Supreme Court in Ravinder Kaur Grewal case. So this is, and one more concept, that is adverse possession. Adverse possession, constructive possession, you should know all these terms. Adverse possession, good judgment is there on adverse possession. The ingredient, what should be the ingredients? Tribhuvan Shankar case, Tribhuvan Shankar versus Amrut Lal case, 2014 judgment. It says the person in possession who is claiming adverse possession must mention when he entered the possession property, how he entered the possession property, and how his possession has become hostile to the real owner, and how long he continued in possession of the property, and his possession is hostile. So, open, continuous, nec me, nec clam, nec precario. There are three ingredients: open, continuous, hostile, and uh, other. And it is hostile to the original owner. These ingredients must be established for claiming adverse possession. And sometimes possession may be entered by third parties by virtue of agreements, or by way of a contract, and they remain in possession, or by way of oral lease, or whatever it is. That amounts to permissive possession. They never turn it itself into a adverse possession, because the very entry is legal by virtue of a contract or a oral agreement. Therefore, they cannot claim adverse possession on that. So, friends, this is all about suit for recovery of possession under section 5 and 6. And 7 and 8 speaks about suit for recovery of possession of movable property, like a suit for recovery of money. Section 7 says it is also governed by the rules of CPC, Civil Procedure Code, under Order 7, Rule 1 and 2, and other things are common, recovery of possession. Then, when it comes to recovery of possession, the court fee has to be paid is on the 3/4 value of the property, section 24 of Court Fee and Suit Valuations Act. And when the suit is decreed, execution has to be, petition application has to be filed under Order 21, Rule 35 CPC. So, court bailiff would come once the suit is decreed, then EP is filed. If there is no appeal or reverse of the judgment, it has become final, then the bailiff would come and restore back the possession of the property. Apart from recovery of possession, you can also claim mean profits as defined under section 2 of CPC. You can also claim mean profits. Then friends, coming to the other relief, declaration. Sometimes if you fail to forget uh, seeking the relief of recovery of possession, if you seek the relief of declaration, that is bad sometimes, and your suit will be dismissed. If you are entitled to, if you are able to ask the relief of recovery of possession, and if you fail to ask the recovery of possession, then your suit for declaration would be dismissed. There are judgments to that effect. Then coming to the relief of declaration, suit for declaration, it is governed by section 34 of Specific Relief Act. Section 34 says if a person is having right or legal character, any right or legal character, and he can file a suit against a person who is denying that right or denying that legal character or interested to deny that legal character. Actual denial is also not necessary. If the person, the provision itself says, if the person is uh, interested to deny there is a threat of title of the plaintiff from the hands of defendants or some other person, therefore he can file a suit for declaration. Declaration suit can be filed in respect of so many legal rights. For example, I am a lawyer. Someone denies that I am not a lawyer. Therefore, I can file a suit for declaration to establish that I am my profession, and caste, declaration of caste, declaration of religion, declaration of status. Someone says she is the wife of so and so. If any denial is there, she can establish by establishing the marriage, legal marriage, lawful marriage. And someone says paternity disputes and civil death. Someone says a person died and he is not being heard of alive so and so period, as mentioned in 107 and 108 of Evidence Act. Then they can file a suit for declaration for establishing the civil death of person. So all these things are governed by section 34 of Specific Relief Act, and 34 is empowers the persons to seek any kind of declaration if they are entitled to any legal character or any right. So whatever the decree passed under section 34 is a decree in personam. So it binds the parties to the suits and their legal representative. It's not a decree in rem. It is mentioned in section 35. Whatever the relief granted under section 34 is decree in personam. It binds only the parties to the suit and the representatives of the parties. 34, the limitation period, as you all know, general declaration, it is section, Article 58 of Limitation Act. Court fee need to be paid is again under section 24B, half of the value you have to pay over the subject matter of the property. So this is about suit for declaration. And friends, one more relief is suit for cancellation. Section 31 of Specific Relief Act. Cancellation of instruments or registered documents. And the 31 says it is only in respect of void or voidable documents. And as you all know, there is a difference between void and voidable documents. And void documents cannot be cured, void ab initio, and voidable documents, they stand valid as long as parties did not challenge. Therefore, cancellation suit can be filed in respect of those two documents only. What I mean to say is, for example, I executed a sale deed in respect of my property in favor of some person called X. The sale deed is validly executed. I received the consideration. It is a registered document. There is an attestation. Everything is perfect. And I delivered possession of the property to him also. Therefore, whatever the ingredients under Section 54 or Transfer of Property Act have been complied. The sale has become complete. Now, I cannot go and file a suit for cancellation to cancel the said document stating that I executed the sale deed on the ground when he offered to pay me some money as a loan. Therefore, cancel the document, because neither it is a void document nor a voidable one. Because if really a fraud has been played, or whatever the conditions mentioned in Contract Act, undue influence, coercion, fraud, mistake, or misrepresentation or existence or existed, or the document is tainted with any one of those defects, I cannot file a suit for cancellation, because the cancellation suit can be filed only in respect of void or voidable document, and I have to establish those ingredients are there to get the document cancelled. Similarly, I cannot go and once the document is executed, for example, I executed a document that is gift deed in favor of my son or a sale deed to some person X. I cannot go and cancel the document by saying that there is a fraud played upon me before the register. There are instances, many instances where sub-registers registered cancellation of documents, cancellation deeds. They are called unilateral cancellation is not permissible because they are only the registering authorities. They are not the adjudicated authorities. It is the civil courts that can cancel the documents. So this ratio has been laid down by the Supreme Court in Tota Ganga Lakshmi case and a recent one, Satyapal Anand case. Satyapal Anand judgment 2016. It says unilateral cancellation is not permissible. Therefore, if you want to cancel a document, if you are affected by an instrument, if you are aggrieved that, if you feel that an instrument is adversely affecting your rights, then you can go and file a suit for cancellation, satisfy the conditions, and get the document cancelled. And section 31 says whenever a document is cancelled, the concerned court has to send a decree copy to the concerned office of registrar where the document is registered. This is to what is that to delete from their entries, or whenever you take an encumbrance certificate, you would find the entries of the documents over the property. Therefore, when the document is cancelled, it must be known to the public, right? Therefore, whatever the decree is made, that has to be sent to the copy. Copy has to be sent to the concerned register to delete from their entries. So, friends, this is another relief by the specific relief act. And one more, there are two other relief, rectification and rescission 26 and 27. Whenever a party wants to resign the document or rectify the document, they can file. If the other party comes, there is no problem. They can go and get the document cancelled, rectified, resigned it. But when the other party fails to cooperate, they can go and file, approach the civil court for enforcing the right of rectification and rescission. So this is about rescission and rectification. And one more important topic, one important suit in specific relief act is suit for injunction, suit for perpetual injunction. So when a right, I am in possession of the property. Again, here title is somewhat not material. I am in possession of the property. As you all know, possession is 9 out of 10 points of law. And Supreme Court in Ramegowda case also states a settled trespasser can also maintain a suit for injunction. And 2018 judgment Sunkamma case, Supreme Court says a person in lawful possession is entitled for injunction under section 38. So 38 is there are several types of injunction: perpetual, temporary, and mandatory injunction. And temporary injunction, as you all know, in any suit you can file a application for temporary injunction. It is governed by Article 30, Order 39 of CPC, and substantive law is Specific Relief Act Section 37. It can be filed at any stage of the suit, and the court may pass order till particular time or until further orders of the court. During the pendency of the case, the court can grant temporary injunction. And you are very well aware, temporary injunction, the guidelines are prima facie case, balance of convenience, and irreparable injury. These three ingredients are for temporary injunction, because the court is not in a position to ascertain the evidence. The stage has not reached the stage of trial. Therefore, whatever the documents filed by you, whatever the averments made by you in your claim, They are the parameters for the court to arrive at the conclusion that there exists any prima facie case or not. And the balance of convenience, second one, in fact it is a balance of inconvenience. That means if granting of injunction would not cause much hardship to the respondent, instead of non-granting of injunction which cause much hardship to you, then it can be said that the balance is in your favor, tilting in your favor, the court can grant injunction. So these three ingredients are for granting the relief of temporary injunction. Then perpetual injunction. Perpetual injunction is governed by section 34, 38. 38, it is after the trial is over and after entire evidence is led by the parties, and there are certain parameters to avoid multiplicity of proceedings and to prevent, it is all these are preventive reliefs to prevent breach of an obligation existing in favor of the plaintiff. And one more thing, where damages cannot be ascertained and compensation, whatever the compensation would be granted, it's going to be inadequate. Therefore, the court can grant perpetual injunction. The specific relief is perpetual injunction because damages cannot be ascertained because of the wrongful act of the defendant, and compensation, whatever the court may grant, that may not satisfy sufficient for the injury sustained by the plaintiff. Therefore, the court has to grant perpetual injunction, uh, completely, permanently restraining the defendant from committing the further act of injury to the plaintiff. So, whenever injunction suit has been decreed, it can be executed under Order 21, Rule 32, and it becomes executable only when the breach is continued by the defendant, right? And there is no perpetual injunction. There is no limitation because it is a continuous one. Uh, this is with regard to perpetual injunction. Then another relief is mandatory injunction, section 39. There is a right existing in favor of the plaintiff. Say it is an easement right of pathway to reach the fields, and the land of the plaintiff is behind the land of the defendant, and the defendant land is abutting the national highway, and the plaintiff has to trade or take his car track or vehicles over the land of the defendant over a period of time, and he has no other alternative way. Therefore, he has to invariably pass through the fields of defendant. One fine morning, defendant closes the pathway, car track, whatever it is, and he puts a wall or gate across the pathway. So unless and until that obstruction has been removed, the defendant is not in a position to the plaintiff is not in a position to reach his fields. Therefore, he can ask the court by filing a suit for mandatory injunction. In that, if the remedy is imminent or immediate relief needs to be granted, he can also file an application for temporary mandatory injunction, restraining the defendant from creating obstructions to exercise his right of easement. So this is one variety of suit for mandatory injunction. So friends, these are the several reliefs. Now, specific performance of contracts. So, uh, and regarding injunctions, I have forgotten. Section 41 says cases in which injunction cannot be granted, and section 42 injunction to implement to prevent breach of a negative agreement. If a contract consisting of two agreement, one is positive and one is negative, though the positive agreement cannot be enforced because of the nature of the agreement, the negative agreement can be enforced. I'll give you one example. Section 42, I am talking about section 42 of Specific Relief Act. For example, an actor entered into a contract with a film director to act in his films. There are two clauses in the, say there are several clauses and two are important. One is he has to act in the films of that particular director over a period of 1 year, or 1 year or 2 years. Then there is an this is a positive agreement. There is a second agreement clause is, during that particular period of 1 year or 2 years, he shall not act in the films of other directors, other producers. So these are the clauses. Then clause 1 cannot be enforced if the actor violates the condition, because it involving personal skill. If you insist, if the court passes a decree directing the actor to act in particular director's producer's film, the actor may not give proper expressions. Therefore, that cannot be enforced also. Uh, Now, merely because he cannot enforce the positive clause, the producer can file a suit for injunction against that particular actor, restraining him uh, to act in others' films. So this is indirect way of implementing the contract. This is all mentioned in section 42, friends. And now specific performance of contracts. This is very important. Earlier, there were prior to amendment. Naturally it is from section 9 to 25 or 24. Uh, Section 9 says what all the defenses you can take to attack a contract, you can also very well take in a suit for specific performance, like coercion, fraud, undue influence, and the contract is forged one. All these defenses can be taken if you are a defendant in a suit for specific performance of an agreement or a contract. So, section 10 to 24 deal with various aspects, specific performance of contract, when specific performance of contract can be awarded, when it cannot be awarded, part of the contract, section 12, and section 16, what are the personal parts, and who may be the plaintiffs and who may be the defendants, and what is the discretion the courts have to exercise, and section 22, what reliefs can be added along with a suit for specific performance. This was the position prior to amendment, and now it has been drastically amended. The act has been amended because earlier, granting the relief of specific performance is a discretion. It is an exception. General rule is award damages or compensation. Don't grant the relief of specific performance merely because it is asked. It's been asked, don't grant. That was the position. But now, thus, the discretion of the courts has been totally removed. Courts have to grant the relief. Granting the relief of specific performance is a general rule now, and denial is an exception, because in view of development in economic era and industrial infrastructure projects, and to put an end to the litigation quickly, uh, the amendments have been brought by the law ministry, and from 1st October 2008, as it has been come into force. Now, section 10 has been totally changed, that drastically changed. What section 10, earlier there was presumptions, the presumption, adequate compensation, inadequate compensation, damages cannot be ascertained. Those were the ingredients of section 10. Now, section 10, it says courts have to grant the relief of specific performance unless they are covered under section 11, 14, and 16. There are only 5 or 6 circumstances where specific performance cannot be granted. Otherwise, it is a general rule. Granting of relief of specific performance is a general rule, section 10. Then section 11 is a bar. It says if it is in case of a trustee, duties to enforce the performance to enforce the duties of the trustee, which are ultra vires, cannot be granted. That is one bar. And section 14 says contracts which are in the nature of personal volition. The earlier example I have given, where personal volition of the parties is involved, that cannot be enforced. Similarly, those contracts which the court cannot supervise continuously, those contracts also cannot be enforced. There is another bar under section 14. And one more bar is, if the person obtains substituted performance. A new device has been invented, substituted performance. I'll explain. So if a substituted performance is also taken, then specific performance of the contract cannot be enforced. Similarly, the contract in the nature of determinable nature. For example, both parties put a condition in the contract stating that uh, on the part happening of particular event, this contract goes and this much of amount can be awarded towards damages or compensation, whatever it is. A particular sum is named in the contract, then the contract can be said to be in the nature of determinable nature. Therefore, specific performance of those contracts also cannot be granted. Then the question may arise: what is substituted performance? Section 20, a newly incorporated provision, amended provision, substituted performance. For example, I entered in a contract with a developer to develop my land into 10 flats, 10 apartments, 10 blocks of apartments. And the time fixed is 3 years, but the developer or builder failed to perform his part of the contract. Therefore, the right available to me is I can issue a notice. Upon his failure to fulfill the promise, I can file a suit for specific performance of agreement, development agreement, and get the work done. Or sometimes the court may award compensation or damages to me. Now it has been changed. I can get the work done through another agency or my own agency or some other person, third party, and get the development work done and collect the money or compensation or cost of such development from the defaulting party. That is the person who defaulted, who committed breach of the contract. Am I clear, friends? So substituted. If you agreed to do something, you failed to do, therefore you committed breach of the terms of the contract. Then I don't have time. I have to get my work done. I have to sell my plots and make money. Therefore, uh, uh, I can get my work done through another agency or my own agency and can recover the money from the defaulting party. If I get my work done through another agency or some other person or my own behalf, then I am not entitled for enforcing the contract again. That is the bar. Similarly, what precautions I have to take before I could start the work of substituted performance. I must invariably have to issue a notice to the other party, stating that so and so you entered into a contract with me and agreed to complete the development work within a period of 3 years. So far, you did not complete. Therefore, I am getting my work done through another person. If you fail to commence the work or complete the work within a period of 1 month or whatever it is. So, a notice of 1 month has to be given. Unless you issue a notice, your act will not recognized by section 20. Therefore, you are not entitled for costs also. If you issue a notice and get your done work, then you are entitled for recovering compensation or damages from the defaulting party. Am I clear, friends? This is called substituted performance. This is newly invented provisions. And section 20, earlier undue hardship and irreparable injury, those things are there. Discretion has to be exercised by the court. That discretion has been totally taken away, and granting of relief of specific performance is general rule now. Denying is an exception. So, and other provisions in the Act is section 20A, injunctions. Injunctions are from 37 to 42, and 20A has been added. There is a bar for granting of injunction in respect of infrastructure projects. So, whenever there is an infrastructure project, injunction cannot be granted by any court in respect of that project. What is an infrastructure project has been mentioned in the schedule at the end of the act, and the act also gives power to the central government to amend the schedule and add some more projects or delete some projects from it, so as to prevent the courts from granting injunctions over infrastructure projects under section 20A. And say there are other sections added, 20B, special courts. Special courts, the act also made provision for establishment of special courts for dealing cases in respect of infrastructure projects, section 20B. And 20C speaks about expeditious disposal of suits. And 20B is in respect of infrastructure projects, whereas 20C speaks about expeditious disposal. Any suit filed under this act, like injunction, recovery of possession, rectification, cancellation, and declaration, the act says those suits have to be disposed of within a period of 12 months. 12 months, and the time can be extended up to 6 months. That is 18 months. Those suits have to be disposed of from the date of the time commences from the date of receipt of summons by the defendant. So this is about section 20 and 20C. And another provision, engagement of experts, section 14A. 14A says, like CPC, there is a provision for appointment of commissioner because the court is not in a position to ascertain or do some ministerial acts, and the court can take the assistance of commissioners. So likewise, if the court, if wherein a suit for specific performance is filed, the court can also take the assistance of technical experts on any matter, and whatever the report is given by the technical experts is going to be evidence in the record. The technical experts are having power to inspect the documents, inspect the premises, and summon any person to appear before them. Like a commissioner, he can act. He is called as a technical expert under section 14A. So friends, apart from the 14A and other provisions, and section 16 has also been amended. 14 contains 4 things where specific performance, where contracts are not specifically enforceable, determinable nature, where substituted performance has been awarded, and contracts involving personal skills of the parties, and when the person himself violates the essential terms of the contract, he is also not entitled for specific performance. This is under section 14. Under section 16, there is a personal bar earlier, and now now also it is there, but there is a slight change. Earlier, the law section 16C insisting for mentioning in the plaint, averring and proving. Averment in the plaint, there should be an averment in the plaint, and there should also be a proof to show that whoever comes to the court, they have to establish their readiness and willingness to fulfill the essential terms of the contract. His part is always ready and willing to perform his part of the obligation. Then only he can ask the other side to perform his part. But now the term averment, so far as regards averment in the plaint, has been omitted. Therefore, one need not aver in the plaint. Pleadings already governed by section order 6 CPC, and material facts must be stated. But section 16C, earlier there was a condition that one has to aver in the plaint and prove that he is always ready and willing to perform. But now that has been dispensed with. Only proof of readiness and willingness is required. Averment in the plaint is not at all required. It is dispensed with. You can aver in the plaint, but if merely because you did not aver in the plaint, your suit is not going to be dismissed now. This is a change in section 16 of the Act. Now, another aspect is what about the nature of the amending Act, whether it is a prospective and retrospective. Always amendments to Act are always prospective. It is not retrospective. The Act is silent, but in one case, Union of India versus Indus Bank Limited, it says it is only prospective. The amendments are prospective nature. So it applies to contracts entered subsequent to 110 or suits filed subsequent to 110/2008. It is prospective, not retrospective. So these are the important aspects, friends, with regard to specific performance of the contract. And for filing a suit for specific performance of contract, the court fee has to be paid is the value of the contract, section 29 of Court Fees Act. The limitation period is article 54, it is 3 years from the date of the contract. If the time is fixed for performance, it has to be calculated from that date, article 54. If there is no time fixed for performance, it is from the date of knowledge of refusal of performance by the defendant. So whenever the plaintiff comes, the knowledge comes about the knowledge that the defendant is denying, refusing to perform the contract, then the time starts from the day, 3 years. And if a time is fixed in the contract, it is again 3 years from the date. So friends, this is all about specific performance of suits, specific relief act. If you have any queries, please post your queries in the comment. I'll try to answer in my free time. Actually, I'm going to upload this subject in 3 or 4 videos by explaining in detail. That may be useful for those who are appearing for junior civil judges exam. And that. And one more provision which is also important in my view. There is an amendment with regard to section 21. Earlier, the court is also having discretion if the contract is broken. The court can grant compensation in addition or in substitution of performance. But now the term addition has been substitution has been removed. In addition, so granting of compensation is also an eminent one. The court, in addition to granting the relief of specific performance, also award compensation. So substitution has been removed. So it is the court is having power to grant compensation in addition to the specific performance. Similarly, section 22 is there. In a suit for specific performance, you can also seek the relief of recovery of possession. Agreement is entered for purchasing a property, possession has not been delivered, and the suit is declared for performing the contract, and sale deed has been executed. Now possession is still with the owner of the property. Now you can also ask for possession of the property because possession is ancillary to sale. Therefore, you can also, if you forgotten to ask the relief of possession, you can ask possession. Similarly, there is an agreement by one of the brothers, property is owned by 2 brothers, and one brother entered into an agreement of sale. You file a suit against him, but it is in the joint possession of those 2 persons, 2 owners. Then you can you can also ask the relief of partition in a suit for specific performance, asking the court to divide the property between those 2, your vendor and also another owner, and give back your property to you. You can also ask for the relief of partition. And alternatively, if you feel that if you are not in a position to go with the contract, or if you are okay with taking back your money, you can also ask for refund of your earnest money. So these 3 reliefs also can be asked in a suit for specific performance. And sometimes you may forget to add those reliefs in your plaint, and section 22 enables you to mention these 2 reliefs even by amending the plaint even at the stage of argument. So you are having a remedy of amendment of your plaint even at the stage of arguments by filing an application under Order 6, Rule 17. And Order 6, Rule 17, there is a bar to file application for amendment after commencement of trial. But in view of Section 22, it is a special enactment. It enables you to file an application for amendment. Therefore, you can file irrespective of the bar under Order 6, Rule 17, since Special Act always prevails over substantive law prevails over procedural law. So, friends, this is my first attempt on YouTube Live, and I upload videos regularly on this platform. Please subscribe our channel and utilize it. Thank you, and good luck.